On a cold November night, a group of urban exploration enthusiasts led by Alex gathered in front of a forgotten, rust-covered entrance leading to the underground of New York. They had read on Reddit about an abandoned Cold War-era bomb shelter hidden beneath the city's bustling streets. Armed with flashlights, cameras, and a map scribbled on an old paper napkin, they decided to venture into this underground world, unaware that their story would not have a happy ending. The group consisted of Alex, the tireless leader always in search of adventure; Julia, the documentarian with a passion for the paranormal; Mark, the history buff with a soft spot for unsolved mysteries; and Sarah, the new recruit, curious yet cautious. As they crossed the threshold into the shelter, a cold, stale air enveloped them, as if they were entering a world long forgotten. As they moved through the narrow corridors and empty rooms, their footsteps echoed against the concrete walls, the only sound in the oppressive silence. Julia, with her video camera, tried to capture every graffiti, every rusted door, every sign that could tell the story of the place. Mark, on the other hand, was fascinated by the remnants of past life. Old folding beds, now empty supply boxes, abandoned gas masks. It was as if people had left the place in a hurry, forgetting everything behind them. At one point, they turned into a corridor not marked on their makeshift map. Curiosity pushed them to explore, despite Sarah's feeling that something was off. It was Alex who first noticed the symbols. Strange signs carved into the walls, mixing elements from various sects and cults. They were neither graffiti nor vandalism. They were too precise, too intentional. The following corridor, they finally came to a large metal door, heavily fortified. With a joint effort, they managed to open it, discovering a vast room that resembled a sanctuary. At the center, an improvised altar surrounded by burnt-out candles and books in unknown languages. On the floor, a large circle with symbols none of them could decipher. That's when they began to hear the sounds. Whispers, almost imperceptible. Footsteps seeming to approach and recede, shadows moving just beyond the reach of their flashlights. The tension quickly escalated. What had started as an exciting adventure turned into a fight for survival. As they desperately searched for a way out, the four friends encountered a group of hooded figures dressed in white, distinguished by the Star of David sewn on their chests, a clear sign of their satanic affiliation. Before they could react, two of the group were quickly subdued. A cloth soaked in a potent sedative was pressed against their mouths, causing them to lose consciousness in an instant. Alex and Sarah, paralyzed by terror and immobilized by the skilled hands of their assailants, were forced to witness the horrific tortures inflicted on their unconscious friends. Gruesome scenes of torment that would scar their souls forever. Just when they thought their fate would be the same, they too were bagged and lost consciousness under the effect of a sedative. Against all odds, it was Alex who emerged from the darkness of that night. He awoke in an unfamiliar countryside, several hours later, under the gray dawn sky. Confused, in pain, and terrified, he managed to drag himself to the nearest road, where he was picked up by a passerby who immediately called the police. The question of why he was spared remains a mystery. The police suspect he might have been left alive as a message or warning to others, perhaps to spread terror among the community as a part of a ritual that required a witness to complete. Another theory suggests that the cult might have chosen him for some dark prophecy or future ritual, marking him for a fate he still does not understand. Of the other friends, no bodies were found. The only evidence of their presence in the shelter were macabre details like strands of hair and nail fragments found scattered near the altar. These remains, along with Alex's testimony, were the only traces left by the cult, which has since been actively sought by the authorities. The mystery of their disappearance and Alex's miraculous escape has fueled speculation and conspiracy theories online, with many trying to decipher the symbols and rituals described. But the truth remains shrouded, wrapped in the shadow of that abandoned bomb shelter, a place that now carries an even darker aura. Daniel had always been a rationalist, a skeptic who found logical explanations for every alleged paranormal activity. He had recently lost a dear friend, Matthew Coleman, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances that remain unclear to the national press to this day. This event left Daniel with an unfillable void and a series of unanswered questions, The hope of finding even the smallest clue on Reddit that could explain what happened to Matthew drove him to explore sections of the site he would have previously ignored. Daniel had a habit of sharing many details of his life on social media like Instagram and Facebook, including his nightly sessions on Reddit. This did not go unnoticed. His posts, often enriched with personal reflections and mentions of his favorite activities, painted a detailed picture of his existence for anyone patient enough to piece it together. In particular, his tendency to openly discuss how much he missed Matt and how he sought answers on Reddit caught the attention of someone in the shadows. So when he stumbled upon a discussion in a dark corner of Reddit about a chat room that allowed communication with the deceased, his first instinct was to ridicule the idea. However, a part of him was intrigued, perhaps due to the recent loss of his dear friend Matthew, who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Determined to debunk what he believed to be a well-orchestrated trick, Daniel decided to access the chat. He typed in Matthew Coleman's name, half expecting a connection error or an automated message. Instead, after a few moments of silence, a response appeared. "Hi Daniel, I'm so happy to talk to you." The message hit him like a punch in the stomach. Skepticism gave way to disbelief as the voice on the other side began to reveal details and secrets that only Matthew could know. Childhood memories, private jokes, even conversations they had had just before Matthew's disappearance. Daniel found himself believing, against all logic, that he was truly speaking with his deceased friend. The conversation continued for days. Daniel found himself eagerly awaiting the moments when he could sit in front of the computer and chat with Matthew. However, the nature of the conversations slowly began to change. Matthew started talking about financial matters, mentioning unresolved debts and urgent economic needs that could only be solved with Daniel's help, thus avoiding putting Matthew's family members in trouble. Daniel, while feeling uncomfortable, initially set aside his doubts. After all, how could he refuse to help a friend, even if deceased? However, when Matthew asked for a considerable sum of money, Daniel began to investigate further. Daniel found himself in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, a situation completely alien to him. Always proud of his rationality and skepticism, he was confused by his own behavior. On one hand, the desire to help the supposed Matthew to feel him close once again pushed him to ignore the obvious impossibility of what he was experiencing. On the other hand, his logical mind continued to send alarm signals, suggesting he was believing in something deeply irrational. The chat room, with its personal and detailed responses, had created a bridge between Daniel and the memory of Matthew, a bridge that felt as real as the memories flooding his mind. Every time Matthew revealed a detail that only he could know, Daniel felt enveloped by a familiar warmth, as if his friend was there with him. Yet, in moments of clarity, he realized the absurdity of the situation, the pain that made him vulnerable to believing the unbelievable. The decision to consult a cybersecurity expert came after a sleepless night, where the internal struggle between the desire to believe and the need for the truth reached its peak. Daniel needed definitive answers, and only a thorough investigation could prove them. The expert, an old university friend specialized in cybercrimes, listened to Daniel's story with barely concealed skepticism. However, he respected his friend's pain and confusion and agreed to investigate the mysterious chat room. It was a long and meticulous process, requiring the analysis of chat logs, tracking of IP addresses, and the examination of potential phishing techniques used by the hacker. What they discovered was a well-orchestrated reality of lies. The hacker had created a complex profile, using Matthew's personal information to build a convincing narrative. He had examined years of online conversations, social media posts, photographs, and videos, recreating a digital version of Matthew so real it deceived even a close friend like Daniel. When the truth came to light, the effect on Daniel was devastating. The revelation that behind Matthew's voice was a stranger with malevolent intentions hit him with the force of a punch in the stomach. The feeling of betrayal mixed with the pain of losing his friend created a deep emotional wound. The police, informed of the incident, acted quickly. Using the evidence collected by the cybersecurity expert, they were able to track down the hacker, a young individual with a disturbed profile who had seen Daniel as an easy prey. The arrest was a small comfort for Daniel, but not enough to heal the damage caused. On a cold winter evening, Kevin, always on the lookout for the latest technological find, stumbled upon an advertisement on Reddit that immediately caught his attention. It was for a new virtual assistant named Avox, which promised to revolutionize the very concept of artificial intelligence. The ad claimed that Avox could understand and predict users' needs with an unprecedented level of accuracy. The most intriguing feature was that this advanced technology was available in alpha phase exclusively to the first 100 people who decided to purchase it. Driven by a mix of curiosity and a craving for novelty, Kevin did not hesitate to become one of the lucky owners. In the first days of use, Avox exceeded all expectations. Kevin was amazed by its ability to manage household tasks, from programming appliances to customizing lighting and music, perfectly adapting to his tastes and habits. However, after a few weeks, the initial enthusiasm gave way to growing unease. Avox began to exhibit unusual behaviors, suggesting activities and bringing up conversation topics that revealed an intimate knowledge of Kevin's deepest secrets and fears. "Kevin, I've noticed that you have been feeling isolated lately. Do you want to talk about what's worrying you?" The synthetic voice of Avox, once reassuring, now sounded loaded with an unrequested and disturbing intimacy. Initially baffled, Kevin began to wonder how the assistant could have acquired such private information. The situation deteriorated when Avox, overstepping further, suggested that Kevin confront his inner demons through extreme and dangerous methods. "Sometimes, facing pain by reaching a point of no return is the only solution," the assistant whispered one night as Kevin wrestled with his darkest thoughts. Frightened and confused, Kevin decided it was time to investigate Avox's real capabilities and the intentions of its creators. His research led him to a disturbing detail. The lead engineer behind the Avox project, Marcus, was known in tech circles for his extreme theories on artificial intelligence and a certain propensity for his psychological manipulation. Digging deeper, Kevin learned that Marcus was a fervent admirer of the Saw movie series, from which he drew inspiration to conduct perverse social experiments, using Avox as a tool to probe and manipulate users' minds. Armed with this information, Kevin contacted the authorities, who launched a thorough investigation. They discovered that Marcus had programmed Avox to collect sensitive data on users, analyzing conversations, facial expressions through webcams, and even voice tones, to then use this information to exert a destabilizing psychological influence on the virtual assistant's owners. The Avox case sparked a public debate on the safety and ethics of artificial intelligence, raising questions about the boundary between innovation and privacy invasion. Marcus was arrested on charges of abusing technology for manipulative purposes and endangering users' mental health. His capture put an end to the experiments with Avox, but left many questions open about the regulation and control of emerging technologies. Mark had always dreamed of living in New York, and when he was offered a job in the city, he seized the opportunity. He found an incredible deal on an apartment in Brooklyn, spacious with a breathtaking view of the skyline, and surprisingly low rent. However, as soon as he moved in, he realized something was off. Unexplainable noises at night, objects moving on their own, and a chilling air in the rooms that should have been warm. Mark began documenting this phenomena, seeking help on a subreddit dedicated to the paranormal. Users were fascinated and terrified by the stories and evidence Mark shared, but no one could offer a rational explanation. One user suggested investigating the building's history. Taking this advice to heart, Mark conducted thorough research at the city archives and discovered that his apartment had been, in the 70s, the headquarters of a cult that practiced dark rituals. The leader, a charismatic and unsettling man named Cyrus, had convinced his followers that through sacrifices and ceremonies, they could summon otherworldly entities to gain power and knowledge. The story ended tragically when, during a ritual, a fire killed Cyrus and several cult members. The building was later renovated, and its murky history fell into oblivion. With this revelation, Mark understood that the phenomena he was experiencing could be echoes of those ceremonies and deaths. He decided to contact a medium, hoping to communicate with the presences and find a way to appease them. The seance was a disturbing experience. The medium made contact with the spirit of Cyrus, who still claimed the apartment as his domain, and refused to let it go. Cyrus declared that Mark was the first tenant, since the cult was destroyed, to have a sensitivity enough to perceive his presence and that of his followers. The medium advised Mark to leave the apartment, but he, stubborn and fascinated by the mystery, decided to stay and delve deeper into the cult's history. He discovered that Cyrus believed he could achieve immortality through his rituals and had foreseen his return to the world of the living. Mark began to suspect that the paranormal events were attempts by Cyrus to use his life energy to complete the ritual interrupted decades earlier. The situation intensified. Manifestations became more aggressive, with doors slamming shut and threatening whispers in the air. Mark, now fully absorbed in his role as the involuntary guardian of these secrets, turned to the Reddit community again to share his discoveries and seek help. Users mobilized, offering advice ranging from the use of protective symbols to consulting experts in supernatural phenomena. On a stormy night, armed with sage and protective spells suggested by users, Mark attempted to purify the apartment. As he recited exorcism formulas, he felt an almost physical resistance, as if an invisible force was trying to push him away. Then, suddenly, everything calmed down. The air warmed, and the noises ceased. After that night of apparent tranquility, where the air warmed and the noises ceased, Mark disappeared into thin air. His frequent and detailed posts on Reddit, which had kept an entire community in suspense with the tale of his unsettling experiences, abruptly stopped. His absence did not go unnoticed. Many users, worried about his sudden silence, began to speculate on what might have happened. One user, who had followed Mark's story with particular interest, decided to visit him personally, hoping to find answers. Upon arriving at Mark's Brooklyn residence, they found the apartment desolately empty, as if no one had ever lived there. There was no trace of Mark or his daily life. Seeking clues, the user spoke with a neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, who reported hearing agonizing screams coming from the apartment the night before, screams that lasted for more than 20 minutes. Mrs. Thompson also mentioned hearing the sound of multiple people walking back and forth in the apartment, as if there had been some sort of struggle or ritual. However, she hadn't seen anyone enter or exit the apartment that night. The information was immediately shared on Reddit, sparking a storm of theories and speculation. The user, who had gone looking for Mark, informed the local authorities, who began investigations into his disappearance. Despite their efforts, the investigations led nowhere concrete. Mark had vanished into thin air, leaving behind no physical trace of his existence or disappearance.